Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined Big Brother as he watches Winston Smith during episode number 273. I'm Keith.
I'm Big Brother.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
Watching you.
I'm not Winston Smith.
I'm watching all of you.
Yeah, Big Brother's watching everyone.
That's true. Did you guys have a good week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was off all week, so it was a good week.
Did you do anything fun with your week off?
We took the kids to Chuck E. Cheese because we were going to go to Trampo Rock Ball Laser Park.
Yeah, whatever that weird name is.
Yeah. And on Tuesday night, and it
So
was
glad
like
they're not a
a
sponsor.
line out the door.
Oh,
and we were
geez.
like, by the time we get in there, we won't have time to do anything. And so Mason was pretty upset. So I said, well, how about if we went to Chuck E. Cheese? I'll take you to this other place later in the week. He said, okay. So I went to Chuck E. Cheese and had dinner and had fun. And then Thursday, we ended up going to Trampo Rock Ball Laser, whatever it's called. And in the morning when there was less people.
Yeah.
And
Did you watch
we
anything
took Mason to see The Good Dinosaur.
How was that?
It's a Western.
Told you.
It's good. It's cute. I enjoyed it. What else? I think that's it. We watched some more Fuller House because Holly and I are watching Fuller House.
Did you watch anything this week, Sean? Or do anything fun this week?
I shot a commercial with a really cute dog.
Yes, you did.
That was fun.
Was Cody in a commercial?
He was.
For Paws in the Park.
Oh.
Which isn't going to be in the park.
He's got quite the ego now.
Where's
he's
Paws
a
in the
TV
Park
star.
going to be?
It's going to be at Topeka West High School.
They outgrew the park.
Mel and I finished Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1. And what else we watched? We watched Lucifer.
Where are you at on Lucifer? Are you up to date?
I think so. And then Venture Brothers, which if you're not watching, oh my god, this may be the best season they've done so far. It's just continue the break. I hate saying this, but I think taking a nice long break between seasons did them a world of good to recharge the batteries, and it's some of the best writing they've ever done. Other than that, we didn't do much. So
I went and picked up the Midway Arcade Lego Dimensions pack. I picked up Aquaman also just because he's really handy. And then
could have said something.
I just kept forgetting. We watched Hotel Transylvania 2. It was enjoyable. I don't know if it was as good as the first one, but it was.
It's not, but it's cute.
It was really cute. Vlad definitely needed to be there sooner. He was definitely one of the best parts of it.
So what do we got in the news, Keith?
There really isn't any news this week.
No news.
No news.
No news is good news.
What about that thing?
You can expect an announcement hopefully soon on a companion. That's all we can say because we don't know who it is. And Capaldi,
Apparently Peter Capaldi knows.
Don't play that key. Tell them we know who it is, and we're just not telling them.
Capaldi knows and has met the person, and they're going to be very different from Clara.
We have on good authority that
That they have cast someone
you've cast somebody. You said they're going to be better than?
different.
Oh, different.
Very different.
Very different from Clara.
Very different from Clara.
He's even avoiding pronouns.
Well, then they'll
I think,
be,
in his descriptions.
They'll be very much in line with what they've been doing because every companion's been different than the other. So
Yeah.
it's because they didn't hire another Clara.
Well, and it's really anybody's going to be different than Clara because Clara has such a history with the Doctor and knows so much stuff. And that's kind of what Capaldi points out in the interview. That's it for news. Shall we move on to feedback?
Yeah.
Our bit of feedback from this week comes from Dr. Phil. He's sent in some audio, so let's give it a listen.
Hello, Vortexans. Hey, it's Dr. Phil, and I am in Springfield, Illinois, about to head down to St. Louis for Palm Sunday concert. And just wanted to say hello to all of the listeners of Traveling the Vortex, and I will catch up, and I will send in some regular feedback as opposed to this, which quite qualify as irregular feedback. Anyway, if I'm not careful, I'll just cause another Hassline curve, and that'll be the end of that. So anyway, Keith will know the reference. So anyway, lots of love. Hope everything's going great in the Vortex. Bye.
All right. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that.
Dr. Phil. Good to hear from you. Glad to You're practically in our backyard, Dr. Phil.
That's true.
It's going down to St. Louis.
See us. Is that all the feedback we got?
That's all the feedback we got.
Even after all our little notes on Facebook reminding people that we were recording on Saturday this week, that's all we got. Huh?
Watch, they're all going to come in tomorrow.
Probably. They didn't see Facebook at all. I was doing my best to remind people that we were recording on Saturday. So. Mostly because we didn't say that last week. Yeah. So I thought, we're going to get a whole bunch of feedback on Sunday that's going to have to wait. But
we don't tend to get a lot of feedback on our Beyond the Doctor conversations. That's true. That's all right. If you want to send us feedback, you can do so by going to our website and clicking on the Send Us Feedback tab, or you can send it directly to feedback@travelingthevortex.com. You can also reach out to us on Facebook @travelingthevortex and Twitter @travelvortex.
All right, let's move on to our review.
If you don't want to send us feedback and you just want to say hi, you can do that too.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to our review.
George Orwell's 1984. Winston Smith endures a squalid existence in totalitarian Oceania under constant surveillance of Big Brother. But his life takes a horrifying turn when he begins a forbidden love affair and commits the crime of independent thought. Sent to the chillingly labeled Ministry of Love, he is placed at the mercy of O'Brien, a coolly treacherous leader determined to control his thoughts and crush his soul.
I don't know.
It was a good movie.
It was a good movie.
I mean, it's.
I watched it Wednesday, and I still don't know how I feel about it. It's one of those movies.
It and the book for me are really start out and plug along as this really compelling forbidden romance and intriguing kind of a mystery as to what this society has come to and what the party is, and it really captivates me. And then it gets to a point where it takes this weird turn, and to be quite honest with you, the last quarter of it, I was very confused in the book, and I thought the movie would help, and I'm really confused in the film. So, I really like it. I think that the performances are phenomenal.
Yeah, John Hurt does a wonderful job.
I think everybody does a really good job. I think that, like I say, it's real captivating. It draws you in, and it makes you wonder what's going to happen. And even watching the movie, having read the book, it has you on the edge of your seat the whole time because you really feel like they're going to get caught. They're going to get caught. They're going to get caught. Or somebody, or she's going to be a turncoat, or she's, because she kind of comes across that way.
Well, especially considering how many other lovers she had had.
Yeah, exactly. Previous to him. So, and they seem to be relatively careful, but you almost feel like they're not careful enough. And then when you get to the point where you think, they've been pretty careful, then you find out they weren't. And it's this weird forbidden romance story for the longest time. And then it becomes this weird establishment thing. And it's just, from the point where he goes to the Ministry, he's taken to the Ministry of Love. And I will admit that visualizing it made a little more sense than when I read those parts in the book. But then I think it's trying to make a point, and I think it does, about the brainwashing and about the how much of a control that the party has over its group.
Yeah.
And how much control it could potentially have over all of society eventually. Because you get the impression, especially more so from the book, that it's really just a faction of this isn't the government yet.
It's just Oceania.
It's just about made its complete stranglehold over everybody. But they referred to the other groups, and I can't remember what they called them, but that don't necessarily have the same amount of restrictions that people within the party have, especially the outer party and the inner party. And then you almost get the impression that, what's the main guy's name? John Hurt's character. Winston. You get the impression that Winston potentially could have moved up into the inner party much quicker or easily had he not had these doubts and this stumbling block and sought out the resistance, which ends up being the wrong thing for him to do.
Yeah.
So it's intriguing all the way up until the point where Orwell seems to be trying to drive home the message of the book. And I think he does it, but it comes across a little, esoteric's probably not the word, but so surreal that it's really hard for me to kind of wrap my brain around what happened there, other than the fact that he
is being tortured and brainwashed.
And
the motivations behind doing those things are kind of muddled.
Right, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is the motivation is other than ultimate power, and even shades of ultimate evil.
Yeah, and what they're trying to achieve by doing this, because I'm still kind of fuzzy on what exactly happened to him in the end. Was he brainwashed and sent back into society? Did they kill him? They kind of left it almost gray, so you kind of were left to kind of make up your mind on your own.
What I suspect the endings there, because there's a lot of doubles throughout this movie. There's a lot of images on pictures that show up that are people that he knows and that kind of stuff. And when he walks past that cafe earlier in the film, the guy that's on TV confessing is in that cafe.
Oh, okay.
He's an older version of that guy. He doesn't quite look the same. He's a little more haggard, but it's him. And I thought, well, that's weird. Why would they do that unless that's important? So then when we got to the end and John Hurt's in the cafe, I thought to myself, well, this is it. This is the holding area. He's here. He's been brainwashed. He's confessed. They got what they wanted out of him.
They've been reprogrammed. Let's put it that way.
Well, I don't think they're going to. I think what it is I think it's a holding cell, basically, that he's medicated out of his gourd and he's quiet, and they're going to allow him to sit here. And then, because the one part of the confession tape is always, I just wish to be shot while my mind is clear. I think that's what happens.
I think you're on the right track, but I think they have been reprogrammed at that point. I think they have completely been reprogrammed. I don't think that it's I don't think it's medications. I think it's actually the reprogramming. It's the final phase of it. And I think the fact that he is writing 2 + 2 equals, and he doesn't even, I don't think he even finished it, did it? I think that's showing us that the reprogramming probably did not take 100% control.
Yeah.
But also, if you'll remember, the guy that's in the cafe earlier that's on the TV and then you see him crying, obviously also didn't quite get the full control report, which lends me to believe that probably is the case, that the next step is they go into some chamber room and they're shot. But
no, I don't. I think it's public. Those people that we've caught in this war that's probably not going on.
I think it's done. I think it's done on video, but I have a feeling it's probably in the back room of that bar, and it's all done on video.
I think
you think it's the people that are being hung.
Yeah,
because the hangings are definitely public. They see their face.
Not the people being hung.
Here's the deal.
Yeah, before they get hung, they're all standing up there, and you see their
cover
faces, and then they cover them as they go by.
But here's the deal: we're at war with Indo-Asia, whatever the other continent is, Eurasia. So it's a whole other continent. You would think that people might look a little different, but they don't. Every single time there's a parade, there's a truckload of people that carted in because they're blaring these things about prisoners of war and this, that, and
but
the other.
But the war's a lie. Ultimately,
right.
the war is a lie.
Where are the people in the trucks coming from?
They're the people that are. My impression is they're putting forth the idea that they're coming from these other continents,
but they're actually the resistance.
But it's actually people that are within the resistance.
They're the people that are all being roped up and gathered up and reprogrammed.
I don't think it's the reprogrammers. I think what that is it's the people that are not part of the party. This is this other group of people. And they're rounding them up, and they're taking them and hanging them under the guise that these are the enemy from the front lines. And that's why those people are hung, because they don't go through any sort of programming. There's no brainwashing them at all, because the brainwashing works in various cycles. Is members of the party are being brainwashed as their party members, but you've also got this other group of people that are living in the alleys where you see the flashback where he's gone to the prostitute. It's those type of people that are not. There's no video cameras there.
That's who they're
there's
hanging.
No television. They're hanging them because they're not people that are susceptible. You have to be a little susceptible to the party. That's why you become part of the outer party first.
Okay,
And
maybe.
they're all being brainwashed, obviously, because of all of the things that we see him go through with the monitor in his room, and it's obviously got a camera because they can see him.
Yeah.
And so I think what they're doing is they're systematically wiping out the people that aren't even attached to the party. And they're doing this under the guise of this is the enemy, because then that also convinces the people in the lower parts and the outer party that, yeah, that we're fighting this war. And as it kind of goes through that. But the other thing we should note is the man that we see in the cafe and on the video that's playing in the cafe is the guy just a scene or two before that is the picture because John Hurt's character,
Right.
Winston,
Oh, yeah.
is one of his history rewriter is what he is.
Yeah.
And what they do is they strike the truth and they rewrite the history, and then he takes the pictures of these people that were originally inner party members or maybe even outer party members and swaps them out for some reason. And later it's divulged that the reason is because they've either strayed from the party or they've tried to join the resistance or they've had thought crimes within the party. And so they're suddenly then, their history is rewritten and put on basically public display. As you kind of pointed out, then it goes to this place and then they're later shot. So I think that the inner party people that are being reprogrammed and set up then to confess are gone on to be shot. And it's a different process than the people that are being rounded up and hung in public.
That
So
could be.
I think
The
it's two
problem that I
different
have is that we don't really get a resistance.
No, we don't.
No.
And he even asks her when she's leaving. He says, "Is the resistance real?" She says, "Of course not," and she walks off.
And I don't think the resistance is
And
real.
I don't think it's a real thing because we see no indication of a resistance. We don't.
I think that's the whole point of the end. Brainwashing is so that they can have a resistance and show that they are fighting, and have somebody to pin crimes on, etc., and instill fear in their populace.
Because
that's
the
the whole
war
purpose of
apparently
the
isn't
last part
enough.
of the film, I think.
But
Yeah.
that makes me wonder then these people that aren't part of the party, because if there's no resistance, who are they rounding up? And so if it's these
There's a
people
difference
that are
between-
outside the party,
That's what it is.
That,
I think there's
you
a
know-
difference between a resistance that is trying to
Fight the power.
fight the power as opposed to the people who are just apathetic to it.
See, I the impression that I get with this thing is that it's such a big deal that you're really not given the choice. It's you're going to join us or we're going
Either-
to shoot
Yeah,
you now.
absolutely.
Kind of
Absolutely.
thing. And I don't get the impression that there's this other group out there. And
Well, there
that
is. There is. And the reason I say that is because the book kind of does a good job.
Okay, now see that maybe coming at it from the book.
The
then,
book
yeah.
does a good job of pointing out that there are people that are not part
Okay,
of
that's different
members of
then.
the party, and that they're kind of outside the party. And you get the impression that the guy that's running the shop is one of these people. Obviously, we come to find out that that's
Yeah,
all a
he's-
setup.
yeah.
But you get the
he's a
impression that he's
sympathizer.
one of these people that is outside the party. That he's.
So the scariest thing to me about that whole setup was the news announcement right before the end, when they come on and talk about this major victory in the war and over 1 million prisoners are coming in. And it's like, well, damn, who'd they bust?
Yeah.
Because these million people,
How much,
they
how much
they
of
can
that's
make
a
up
lie,
real
though?
numbers.
That's the
But-
problem. Is I think that's probably part of the feeding the lie. I just don't-
Right.
I don't think
Because
there's a
obviously
war.
their chocolate
I don't
rations
think there
didn't
were
go
a million.
up.
Yeah, there weren't 1 million prisoners coming in.
But they
as
have to make it appear
as they
that there's a
continue
lot
to
of people,
as they
so.
continue to reel in, between 15 and 30 people and hang them in front of the public, then it appears as though these are the enemy that is coming in.
Because on the previous one in the middle, when he meets her in the square, there were at least 3 truckloads full of gas
Yeah,
that were
yeah.
brought
Oh,
in, and 20 people in a truck at least,
so probably 60 people.
60 people. Okay, so now all of a sudden we're talking, and I don't think they gave a number for that, but whatever victory that was. Here's some prisoners of war. We've got 60 people that you're going to see killed. We've got 1 million. Okay, that's a lie so big. You've got to be able to back it up with something approximating a number that I
But
can't count.
I don't
you know
think
what I
they
mean?
have to, and the reason I say that is because he's working in the Department of Rewriting History, and at one point they're no longer at war with Eurasia.
Right.
They're at war with Pacifica or whatever it was the other one was, and the problem that you find is then they're all rushing to rewrite the Eurasia stuff that they had just been doing.
Yeah.
And that is a way, that's another piece of the mind control of convincing the people that are already somewhat sucked in on the inner party that they're basically brainwashed enough to start believing that, we never were at war with Eurasia. We were actually at war with, and just accepting it. And that's the weird thing that's hard to grasp for me to wrap my brain around is this whole change in, and I think it's part of the whole idea that we kind of drill down to in the microcosm in the Ministry of Love is the fact that it's this wide scale brainwashing that's happening, and they do it in the sense that they're gauging the effects of how many people just kind of go along with it. Yeah, that's who we've been at a war the whole time. If the brainwashing is working, the people that are in the inner party that just accept that are fine. You don't have to worry about them. Yeah. It's the ones that you have to worry about are the ones that are going, oh, wait a minute. We were just at war with Eurasia. And the point that's brought home is the guy that's doing the brainwashing, which was Richard Burton, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is telling Winston, who we were at. And he says, he has that conversation, well, we were at war with Eurasia. Well, obviously that was the key, that this is a guy that the brainwashing isn't working 100%. So we have to take this group of people a step further and try to reprogram them here. And if that reprogramming doesn't work, then yes, I think you're in line with the fact that then they go on.
I wish to God I could see 5. Do you really wish you could see them, or do you just wish that you could tell me you could see them?
So that gives me the impression that the party believes that there are enough people in the outer party that are susceptible to brainwashing without having to go the extra mile.
Yeah.
There are the individuals, which we see, Winston's one of them, the guy that we saw in the video in the bar must have been one of them, that the programming somehow doesn't work. And if the second phase of reprogramming somebody doesn't work either, then they go on to be executed.
Yeah.
My brain hurts just talking about
and there was a lot of that I kind of picked up and I almost had the opposite reaction from you, Glenn, it took me a while to get into the story of what was going on because everything was so foreign, so different, and then having not read the book, I wasn't entirely sure. I wasn't until he was rewriting the history of the guy sitting in the cubicle across from him that I realized he was rewriting history. There was a lot of that stuff. Okay. It wasn't as clear to me, and then I kind of understood even now talking about it even more so, kind of had a good grasp on what was happening at the end part of it. So I almost had the exact opposite reaction.
And you're probably right. It probably comes from the fact that I had read the book.
Yeah.
And so I went into the film already having a lot of information. And so it all kind of... and interestingly enough, in comparing the book to the movie, I'm quite surprised at how... Now, I uncovered something I think that wasn't fulfilled in the film, which I didn't think about until we just started talking about it, and that was the non-party people. But for the most part...
They're such downers.
I remember reading this book... thinking there's no way that you could translate this to film. How did they do it? And now watching it, I realized, wow, they did a fantastic job of translating this to film and truncating it down to a 2-hour film. Because the book's, it's not massive. It's not War and Peace, but it's not a quick read either. But it's a difficult read, so maybe that's why
it's bigger than Animal Farm.
Than it is. Yeah.
Did you know there were 2 other versions of it?
Of the movie?
Yeah.
I think so, because I came across one when I was trying
Peter
to
Cushing.
get... I was trying to get this copy, and I think I looked up on the internet and saw there was at least one more.
Yeah, there was a theatrical 1956 version, but a 1954 copy that was like a BBC TV production.
With Peter Cushing?
Yeah.
Huh. I had no idea the story was that old.
Oh, when we do a Beyond the Doctor for Peter Cushing's Dr. Will.
I think we're going to watch Star Wars. I had no idea the story was that old.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Did Orwell write it in the 1950s? I thought it came out in the 1950s. Or was it even earlier than that?
Let me look it up.
It might have been an immediate...
I wonder if it was a quick adaptation. They quickly turned it.
It came out in 53.
Published in 49.
49.
Oh, 49.
Okay, so it was still
right on the heels of World War II.
It still was a quick turn, it sounds like, as far as film or the television BBC production.
That actually makes a little sense. than coming on the heels of World War II.
Well, I'll tell you though,
it feels very
the
World War II.
impression though that I get is it makes me think of how incredibly forethinking Orwell was.
Oh yeah,
because
absolutely.
it has shades of reality now that we're living. 60 some years later, 70 years later, and to look at how many parallels people make to 1984 to today, which after reading the book I realized are a lot looser than they were before I read the book. But you do see some of those iconic parallels in today's society, and so I'm treading dangerously close to where you didn't let it go, so I'll back off of that. But it is interesting that it still speaks volumes today in today's society as much as it did in 1949.
As any good sci-fi does, still has ramifications and reverberations through society.
Which is frustrating because of all of the sci-fi that should have.
the dystopian sci-fi should not be the ones that we can relate to.
This is the stuff we should be going, aren't we glad we have evolved beyond that? But no.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think when I did the review, it was as much as people equate 1984 to today's society, it's really a farther reach than some other science fiction that I've read. And while it still does echo some of the path we've taken, it's vastly different, I think, than what society, especially since 1984, the actual year of 1984. We've vastly taken a different approach, but there are still shades of similarities. So. And
I didn't realize how much influence the story had on just other sci-fi and dystopian stories later down the line. I mean, I obviously haven't read the book, but just the film itself, there were so many shades of so much of the teen dystopian that we have right now.
Isn't that interesting?
There's a lot of it there.
We talked several shows ago about how I had mentioned that it just really feels like I'm tired of post-apocalyptic fiction. I'm tired of the gray future that we have, the post-apocalyptic look at the future, and I long for the 1950s through the 70s, and then again with Back to the Future, with the more bright, encouraging future that we used to get,
kind of that Star Trek future.
Yeah, back in the from the 50s to the probably mid 80s, we got this rosier picture of the future, and it wasn't until the 90s and on that we started getting this. And I long for that.
Put some of
but
it
it's
in
interesting
squarely in the 80s.
Well, yeah, but it's interesting to
Demolition Man. That's a future that
It's interesting to though look and see that this came out in 1949 as a book, and realize that it goes that far back. So
yeah, well, and I think a lot of that also is if it came out in 1949, I don't know when it became kind of standard reading in school. Well, then those people would be out of high school making film. Well, and then if it had a big influence on them, they would then go in turn make similar stories.
I had the option to read this or Animal Farm in my 8th grade reading class. And so, no,
I don't remember having the option, but I read Animal Farm.
I read Animal Farm too. I don't remember.
And so I picked Animal Farm, so I had read that one. But that and Fahrenheit 451, which is another dystopia, which I ended up reading that one as well. But
when are they going to make a good movie version of that?
I
keep hoping. I keep hearing they're going to do it.
I haven't seen the full film, the original one, but as much as I watched it, was so drastically different that I gave up on it.
Sorry, segue there. I'm a big fan of that book.
That's one I haven't read either.
I kind of keep waiting for somebody to tackle that one and be like, yeah. No, nothing yet. I think it's interesting. Keith mentioned that how much what was the word you used? The template, if you will, that this is the great grandfather, if you will, of all
really
dystopian stuff. Even the films that were made before, in some way, shape, or form, I think
to the story,
novel, to the novel.
Yeah,
you can tell watching this film,
which in this feels very 80s.
Yeah, but you can tell watching this movie, George Lucas had to have been influenced by the book when he made THX 1138.
Absolutely. I kept paralleling that as I was reading the book.
It's very much there. You can tell that when they made Blade Runner. Philip K. Dick he had to have been influenced by the book when he wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. There were just moments in there that he was like, this is where we're going with this. And all the way down the line, you look at things like V for Vendetta. Yeah. You look at...
Which I was going to bring up later, in the fact of how ironic is it that in that film, John Hurt plays the face on the screen.
He plays the Big Brother character. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know
the
John
actor
Hurt.
has become full circle.
I don't know John Hurt personally. I would like to think John Hurt took a great deal of perverse pleasure, and just that he thought that was a cool joke.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and
I wonder how much of that was on purpose by the directors.
I don't know.
It's interesting if we get into this, but I think that there are two tracks of patterning science fiction, and one track takes the Orwellian version, which is the dystopian future, and the other track takes the H.G. Wells version, which is not necessarily dystopian. It's always very bright, futuristic.
Yeah.
And so, hopeful, yeah, thank you. So you've got dystopian, you've got hopeful, and it's interesting that you could drill everything that has been done all the way back to both of those two authors. And I think it's fascinating that you touched on Blade Runner, because I just rewatched it recently, and it reminded me of, that's probably the only story that I can think of that takes elements of both, because while it is very sort of dystopian ideas in it, there's also the very bright futuristic. I mean, we've got slums, that's always going to be there, but we've also got the big flying car. We've got the flying cars. We've got the big flying billboards. We've got the very bright lights and cityscapes that you kind of get from that hopeful idea, but then the subject matter of it is that dystopian idea. So I that's kind of interesting that now that you say that Blade Runner is one of those few films that's kind of a meld of both.
Yeah, I don't find Blade Runner particularly uplifting.
Well, I don't think it is uplifting, but
I mean, even
visually it's hopeful. Visually, it is bright and colorful above the surface when you get down into the alleyways and things like that. But even the guy that had created the androids that became Rogue it's a futuristic mansion. It's very high tech. If you have money, you live well. If you don't have money,
right?
But much like society is now.
But even visually, the bright and colorfulness comes from the ads.
Well, it certainly does.
Which did you happen to see real life that we've got? We're going to get the Blade Runner blimp now.
Oh, I didn't see that.
There's an advertising drone. It's basically a big giant
3 years
floating circle.
So Blade Runner's only 3 years off.
And it's designed to basically a drone that's going to be a floating billboard. And it's going to come around. It's got an LED screen on it that's going to. And I'm kind of like, ooh, creepy, because it looks like the one from Blade. It's not as big, but it looks like the one from Blade Runner. But all of the color comes from the marketing that we're going to push this stuff on you, and all of those beautiful shots of cars flying through the thing. It's all set to the weird, Tangerine Dream music.
Yeah.
And then we've got the fire smokestacks in the background.
Right. The industry.
And so it's I've kind of always compared that to this. Look, we've got flying cars, but the atmosphere is so polluted you really wouldn't want to fly through.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So there's still an element of
I'm not denying that, but I can see elements of both in the film, and so I think
I'll give you that.
It's interesting that
it's not Back to the Future too hopeful.
No.
Oh no.
And helpful's the wrong word. Like I say, one of it. It's almost a visual meld with the tonal structure of Orwellian.
So what about Julia? What
happens to her?
Do they explain in the book? Is she?
Well, it sounds
plant?
like
I can't.
Because she goes back to work.
It sounds like she just turns on
they
him
definitely
and
don't.
just.
I get the impression from both that she turned and he turned. He took a lot longer to turn.
Yeah.
Because at the end, when they're threatening with the rats, he obviously pins everything on her, which is so gut wrenching that he finally gets to that point. But
boy, and when they brought the rats, I got to talk about the rats.
Good. Wait, it's not. It's good because it's not really clear where her role in all this was.
See,
I like that they left it.
I was upset because I really felt like it was very ambiguous through the whole thing that we don't know what happens to her, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned like he's concerned. What did you do to her? What's happening? Oh, she turned on you. And I'm like, yeah, but you've lied to him about everything else.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, exactly.
But then she shows up in uniform with a briefcase back didn't
Like
lose her
nothing
hair,
happened,
like
yeah.
nothing happened. And then I thought about her comment when he asked her. He says, "Have you done this before?" She goes, "Oh yeah, hundreds of times."
Right.
Is that her job? To be a
Is
plant,
that actually her job?
and go forth and seduce these people and bring them over to this way
Those
of
they
thinking.
suspect of thought crime.
Maybe she's even in league with the guy that runs the building.
Well,
I think
you're meant to.
You're meant to question all
You're
of
meant
that.
to question
Yeah.
all that. Yes, I agree.
So the rats, and he says, "Oh, in your case, it's rats." And he pulls the thing off, and they got rats in a cage. And I went, not scary, not going to faze me at all. And then they hooked him up to his face, and I went, "Oh my god, this is horrifying."
I just have that. I had that vision of. I can't even remember what it is that I watched recently. Maybe it was John Wick, where they took him into the room. I don't think it was John Wick. What was it? Where they take a guy into this back room at this club, and they put this just a bucket on him with the rat inside there, and the rat's starving. And he's describing how eventually the rats will start eating to get out. They're so claustrophobic that in order to get out, they will actually start to burrow down through this guy.
Yeah, I remember that
What
scene.
is
I don't
that?
know what that was.
What is that from?
I don't.
And
that
I
doesn't sound
just
familiar to
watched
me.
it recently, and
It must be John Wick.
I don't think it was John
No,
Wick,
I don't think
though.
it was John Wick. It was a Fast and the Furious film. It was one of the Fast and the Furious films. It was the one where they go to Florida, and it's
Fast and the Furious 2?
must have been
where they
two.
go
It
to
must have been
Florida.
two. Well, I think I've only seen 2 or 3 of the films. So no, it must have been the third one. The third one was Tokyo Drift, right?
I think they do go.
So okay,
South
so yeah, it was
in the
Florida.
second one.
I'm certain it was Florida. It was, so in Fast and the Furious 2,
This dude in Rat and Bucket pulls up Too Fast, Too Furious.
that's it. So it was the
Okay.
second film. Yeah,
I must have seen
And
that part
they-
of it.
They take him into this back room because Paul Walker's character is trying to infiltrate this group of runners, and
Of
it's
course,
all
it was
about,
also in Game of Thrones.
It has to do with yeah, that's right. It was in Game of Thrones, but it had to do with drugs. I'm getting way off subject, but yeah, it definitely was that one. But anyway, so I have that image of so I know what they do. So I have this image in my head of them burrowing through. I knew they weren't going to because I read the book, but burrowing through Winston's face and into his brain, and I thought,
they do a great job of describing what's going to happen.
Oh,
Man.
Ugh. Yeah, no, it wasn't until they did the across the room shot and the cages, because when they strapped him in the chair and this thing's over,
yeah.
it looked like there was a spike. They were just going to come down and flip a lever, or maybe hit the thing with a hammer and just we're going to lobotomize you, and it's going to be quick, and bam, and here comes the thing. And then he's going on about it's whatever your fear is. For some people, it's being buried alive. For some people, I'm like, what do you have a spike on the chair for then? I was really
I think
caught
they were
up.
just keeping his head still so he could.
Well,
move it.
but that's what the cage hooked up to.
That's
it
right.
wasn't a
Yeah,
spike.
that's
It
right.
was a
That's right.
hook. And just for whatever reason, the angle, I just what is it? But then all of a sudden, it was right here, and I went, "Oh God!" That was the most unnerving thing of anything in the movie.
Oh, yeah,
agreed,
absolutely.
Agreed. I mean,
And I don't have a thing
the
for
torture
rats,
table was pretty
so-
tough, and this was even worse.
Yeah.
filmmakers do a real good job of walking you into discomfort.
Oh,
and it start. I think of it as kind of a cone or a reversed carrot.
Yeah.
Or it's a carrot. I guess not reverse. And it starts at this level, and then it continues to go to that point. And when you get to the point, it's like. It's completely toyed with your emotions and your perceptions and everything, and it does a really good job of keeping you, like I said, captivated through the whole thing. It just when it takes that turn, and it's like, okay, I think this is what happened, but
Well,
I'm
and
not
John-
sure.
John
But
Hurt
listening now to
helps.
us talk about it, I think we all kind of went the same direction with it.
And John Hurt helps sell absolutely everything that goes on through the entire film.
That man's looked old since he was young.
I thought the same. It started, and Mel came down, and she went, "Wow, he's young there." And Billy did the same thing because he stayed up with us for Friday Night Who last night, and so we watched, Time of the Doctor. I was like, "That's the War Doctor." He went, "No way." I went, "Yeah, that's him." Wow, he's so young. And Mel came down and he went, "Wow, look at him. He's so young." And still looks old. There's just something about John Hurt's. I don't know, it's his eyes or something.
He's got lines.
He- yeah,
he's
he
around his
does.
eyes. forever. It's just he's got a real British look too, though. It's just I'm sure every British listener out there's cringing, going, "Oh my God, you think we all look the same?" But
he really
there's
wasn't
a real
that young.
There's a look.
He was 44 when filming the film.
Well, come on now. I'm going to be 44 in 2 months.
It's not like he was 18.
I don't think I look like I was.
Well, no, but it's not like he was 18 during this film.
Yeah. Still,
I don't think I look as young as John Hurt looked in that movie. And I've got a year to go, but.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's nothing that it's certainly nothing that I could rewatch anytime soon. But it is one of those ones that I'm so glad we did this one.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those iconic films that everybody should see. I think it's a book that is tough of a read as it is. I think it's one of those books everybody should read.
Well, it makes me want to read the book even more. I mean, the book's kind of always been on my "I'll get around to it eventually" list. Everybody's got one of those
bumped it
lists.
up on my list.
It's bumped it up now, and I think that's probably a good thing. Because normally I would always try and watch the movie first. In this instance, I feel pleased and justified that we went the other way, because I think that
you've always wanted to read the book first. You mean?
Yeah, is that not what I said?
You said watch the movie first.
Because I like to watch the movie first, and then if I like the movie, then I go read the book.
Yeah, so I'd rather.
I'm not going to invest.
I'd rather read the book.
I'd rather read the book.
I don't want to invest that amount of time into a book if I don't know if I'm going to like it or not.
But I feel justified with this, because it's like, now that I've kind of got this, and maybe that won't be fair to the book, but now that I've got a preconceived notion of what's going on, I feel like I'll be able to tackle it a little better.
Clarify things.
Yeah, really kind of delve into it.
Well, I know it was one of those books that I got done with and realized, okay, I'm glad I did that, and it felt like a mammoth effort. But on the flip side, I kept going, I will never read this again. I'll never have to read this again. And it wasn't until I saw the film that I thought, okay, maybe sometime I'll go back and revisit the book again.
You know what it reminded me of is Brazil.
Yeah. Well, without the dark humor.
Yeah.
Because there's no dark humor in this.
There's no humor in it at all. But still that kind of same oppressive and then a forbidden love and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's another one. I don't know which came first.
Maybe also inspired by, obviously.
The book obviously came first.
Yeah. But obviously probably inspired Gilliam to do Brazil in the style and way that he did it.
And the movie even came after this movie. It was 85.
Brazil was 85, so.
Is Brazil really that new? I didn't realize that. I say new. That was still 30-some years ago. But
it doesn't feel like it.
No, it doesn't. It feels like an older film.
1970 something.
It does. It really does.
I think it's the style of Gilliam's films.
Yeah,
that's true.
Even Fisher King feels old, and I mean, by old I mean like it's been around a while. And I saw Fisher King in the movie theaters when I was.
Fisher King was what, 87?
I was in high school, so I'm probably later than that. 89, I bet.
But 12 Monkeys, I think, is
91.
Fisher King was 91.
Yeah, so
12 Monkeys feels like it was not made in 93 or 94, whenever it came out. That's got to be his style. But so many of them can be traced back to
12 Monkeys, I reviewed that, so that must have been 95.
I think you're right. Well, yeah, I think you're probably right. I thought it was earlier than that. Well, I still think it's earlier than that.
It was 95.
It feels earlier.
I reviewed that one for when I would used to do movie reviews on television. So
you were in television?
You knew that.
You were in movie reviews?
I'm in television now, but I don't do movie reviews anymore. All right, so
John Hurt, we've kind of, I think, danced around the movie and everything. Now we want to talk a little bit about his performance, other than it was great.
Oh yeah.
Because I know John Hurt from Alien, and I know John Hurt from Harry Potter, and I know
little as he's in Harry Potter.
Although I don't feel as bad for the torture that his character endured in that after seeing this.
Yeah. Ollivander can take it.
I think Ollivander had a walk in the park compared to this film.
I'm trying to think what else I know John Hurt from. I mean, he's V for Vendetta. I mean, he's
Indiana Jones.
He's done so much, and that's just not even scratching the surface of what he's really been in.
It's funny that you say that. I don't think he's been in a lot. I mean, it's mainstream. And we sit here, we name off all these mainstream films, but
we name off all these sci-fi films.
Well, he's no Harrison Ford or Clint Eastwood or no.
No.
But his
when they
parts
announced
always.
John Hurt for the 50th, I was all excited, and Sarah said, "Who's that?"
Yeah, and I think that's the case with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think
So is
it's
it just
because
that he's got strong geek cred?
I think it's because he's always such a secondary role in everything that almost everything he does.
Yeah.
V for Vendetta, Alien, even he's sidelined at about halfway through.
Yeah.
2/3 of the way through.
Yeah, he's second minute.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
now Spaceballs. We got to...
Oh yeah, well, Spaceballs, of course. Although he's reprising a role, but
It's only the last 5 minutes, if that.
And interesting, you can watch Spaceballs, and he looks almost exactly like he does in Alien. Like
and almost exactly like he does in 1984.
But there's no time that has passed between that. But then all of a sudden, time snapped, and he got really old really quick.
Well, I remember seeing Kingdom of the Crystal. Even in the first Harry Potter film, I didn't think he looked all that old. I mean, he's always looked old, but I didn't think he looked that much different.
He looked old, but it looked like that's Hollywood old.
Yeah, exactly.
They've got a wig on
Kingdom
him.
of the Crystal Skull was the first time that I went, wow, John Hurt finally got older than he looks.
I imagine doing the Crystal Skull would probably do that to you. It'd probably make y'all older.
Hush. It's a fine film.
I'm an apologist for it.
It's not the best, but it's a fine film.
I will probably stand next to Crystal Skull.
They announced this week that they're doing an Indy 5, so
I know.
I'm pleased.
I thought it was weird that there was so much online excitement, and these were the same people that were lambasting Crystal Skull.
It's the way it goes all the time.
And they even hired the same screenwriter.
Which you expect it to be different.
I'm gonna bag on that for just a second. The article came out and said they hired David Kopp, who wrote Crystal Skull, but he knows his way around because he wrote Jurassic Park and he wrote Lost World and he wrote I forget what the other one was, and it was kind of like, okay, so what you're saying is
Mission Impossible.
Oh, I don't know. It was something else Spielberg did.
Oh,
Bridge of Spies, maybe.
No, Minority Report, didn't he? No.
I don't think it was Minority Report. Whatever it was. There's like legitimately, there's like one really good one out of that group, and the rest of them are kind of,
War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds.
That was the one, yeah.
The rest of them are kind of, okay. When you really boil it down, out of that particular group of films, I think Jurassic Park is the strongest of them, and the rest of them are entertaining, but not really much else there. And they're all adaptations.
Yeah. Well, I think Crystal Skull had a lot more wrong than the writing. Yeah. I think it had. That's the thing is, I have faith in him as a writer because I think he has written some good film, and I think that despite the fact that he wrote Crystal Skull, it was a story that was Lucas, and I've lost a lot of faith in Lucas. It was a story that Lucas came up with. And I've lost a lot of faith in Lucas.
And when you hear a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff, you hear a lot of what was shoehorned in.
Well, and Shia LaBeouf, I think, was a huge problem with that film. I think that the character was fine. I just think the actor was the wrong choice. So there's a lot more wrong with what happened there than the writing of that film. So.
Yeah, I would agree.
We'll cover this on our sister podcast, Flicks with Friends, at some point.
I think I know what we're doing for our first week.
We might have to do that. I'd be down for that. But it's John Hurt. So Hellboy. What was the other one that you threw out?
Oh God,
he was something else that it's like, okay, I know John Hurt, but then it really between Alien and then all the recent stuff, I felt like there was this huge gap where I couldn't pin down anything that John Hurt was in specifically. Now I'm aware of things like he was in The Elephant Man, which I've never seen.
Right.
But he was
phenomenal movie. You got to see that.
1984, and there was one other like really big one that was kind of earlier in his career, I think now, and I can't remember what it was. So I don't know.
Big one. I don't remember.
He was in Contact.
Oh yeah, he was Haddon.
Another small role.
But another small role in another sci-fi
Yeah.
film.
Yeah.
Another late in his...
Rob Roy.
Yeah. So...
I'm not just going to go through...
That's just it, though. He's
but...
always a second banana. He's always a secondary actor in everything that he's done that's big. Especially in the 90s. There in the 90s, he was doing a lot of stuff that he was very much the sideline character. But that's kind of who he is.
Yeah, I mean, do you think
that's kind of the
kinda
roles
just,
he takes.
Just wanted to do that. I
Yeah.
mean, I've never. I know he does a lot of plays.
That's just
but
it. I
wonder
think
if he
he's
does
done a
kind
lot
the
of
same
stage, and I think
stage
he's done a
and-
lot of BBC television probably as well.
I wonder if he
think that's what-
chooses the same kind of stuff there, though, too.
Well, I don't know.
Looking at his
IMDb.
IMDb, even if they're small roles, it's a variety of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, he was Caligula in I, Claudius miniseries. I mean, so he's done a wide range of things.
I guess he had enough success early that he could pick and choose what he wanted. And so maybe that's why he goes after things that interest him.
Well, the other thing I find with British actors and actresses is they, even when they come to Hollywood, they still kind of do that. I'm working to be working because it's something I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for that big payout. I'm not looking for that grand role. I'm not looking for that big part. I think that more younger and modern British actors are doing that now. They're trying to make their break in Hollywood and become like Benedict Cumberbatch. I never can get his name right. Benedict Cumberbatch, I think, is one of those actors. Doing it. David Tennant, maybe even trying. Tom Hiddleston. But I think that there is a generation of British actors that act because they love to act. They don't act because they love the fame.
Yeah.
And I get the impression that John Hurt is one of these actors that does it because he enjoys the job, not because he's looking for fame and fandom and the big block. They would love it if they got one, but I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think they're seeking that out. I think Dame Judi Dench is one of those people. I think Helen Mirren is one of those people. I think those are the people that now, because there's such this British flavor that Americans are craving, they're now finding big blockbuster roles as well. But I think they're all those type of people, and they're not ashamed to go back and do stage and television, and that's why you still see them on TV today. And it's because they all have that wonderful mentality of, I'm an actor and I act. So I just do what, the jobs that are there and available. And so I think there's a lot of that in John Hurt. And I think that's why that comes across as well.
The other difference, at least as far as our Beyond the Doctor series goes, is of all of the actors that we've done this with the exception of Eccleston, who we haven't got to yet, John Hurt is the first actor I had seen in something before Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
All the other actors that we've done this with, I know them from Doctor Who, and that's kind of why we were excited to do this, because it's like, hey, we're going to go out and see what else they've done.
Of course,
I think
Hurt is also kind of an anomaly in the fact that he was the Doctor in one story so late in the run.
2.
3.
3, technically.
3.
Night of the Doctor.
Night of the Doctor, Name of the
He wasn't
Doctor,
a knight.
Day of the Doctor.
Well, we got that.
His voice
Yeah,
and his shot.
At the very end.
I don't count that, but yes.
He's credited.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But yeah, but no,
3.
the War Doctor is in
I'll give
that.
2.5.
John
I'll
Hurt
give you
is in
that.
it and credited. Yeah, but okay. But Keith's back to Keith's point. Yes, that's true. It's not like he had a tenure as the Doctor.
Yeah,
he had a shuffled in
and
role that was basically necessitated by the fact that Chris Eccleston wouldn't do.
Yeah, and chronologically
Hey,
in the show, not even canon, but a Doylist perspective of it, we're doing him out of order. Because, really, it should be him between Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi.
Yeah, chronologically in the show.
Show-wise.
But
So that also adds to the back catalog
We're
for
doing
him.
this whole thing out of order. So.
We're doing the whole thing, so that adds even
we
more
put
to
him
his
before Christopher
back
Eccleston,
catalog.
but Christopher Eccleston was a Doctor before John Hurt was. Is
You see what I'm saying?
Right. It's
So that gives
showtime.
John Hurt's
Yeah.
the retroactive Doctor.
Yeah.
As well.
So it gives him a bigger back catalog of films you could have seen him in before he was on the show.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to
Right.
say.
Okay. So if you go to his IMDb page and eliminate everything from 96, do we want to go after Doctor Who the movie, or do we want to go to the relaunch in 2005?
I'm trying to grasp what you're.
I'm playing
you're
devil's advocate. That
No, I know what you're doing, but what are you doing?
If you eliminate all of the John Hurt films from this year forward, that now would not count if we did this and placed this when it was actually set.
I think his point is that John Hurt didn't become a Doctor until 2013.
Right.
So you get everything back from then, not from 96, because if we were doing this the way that we have been doing it, then yes, you would take 90. Well, I think you could
Somewhere
I
in
think
between.
I think 2005 because
Somewhere between
Christopher
96 and
Eccleston doesn't
2005.
become the Doctor until
Okay,
2005.
so 2005.
anything from 2005 back.
So I still would have seen him in Alien
yes,
And Hellboy.
and Hellboy.
because Crystal
maybe
Skull
not much
came out
else.
after that.
'Cause that was
Sorcerer's Stone.
Oh, yeah. However many of the Harry Potters.
That was
Sorting
just the
Hat
one
out.
by that point.
well, Elephant
but-
Man. I mean, there's a huge
Contact.
catalog.
Yeah,
there
there's
still.
still a-
There's still a huge
Huge
stuff there.
catalog and a lot of geek cred there.
So
too,
my
that you would have
point
known.
being that, like I said, with the exception of Eccleston, and even Eccleston's almost a stretch, because I think the only thing that I was aware of Eccleston, I knew that he was a guy, but I hadn't seen 28 Days Later, and that's kind of the one big one that he's really known for. I remember him as the bad guy in Gone in 60 Seconds, which is a very small part, and he's not really in it all that much, and it's not a terribly well-defined character, although it's interesting when he's building furniture. But I saw him in that before I saw him as the Doctor, versus John Hurt, who I had seen in at least a handful of films before I saw him as the Doctor, versus everybody else, which was not. It was the other way around. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing to bring to it as well.
From that perspective, I suppose I probably saw Patrick Troughton before I knew he was the Doctor. Not before he was the Doctor, but before I knew he was the Doctor.
Because you'd seen the Sinbad
I had
film.
seen Sinbad and The Omen prior to seeing any of Patrick Troughton stuff, because nothing existed in the 80s, with the exception of the Five Doctors, which I guess I probably saw right around the same time I saw those other two films. So I guess it depends on which one I saw first. But
I wonder if that makes an impact on, because like you
Well,
got excited
I think
when
it's-
they announced him for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
50th. Because
I think it's
knew
that.
who it was.
I think that you can paint that picture for almost everybody, with the exception of Chris Eccleston, with the exception of because Matt Smith and David Tennant, I had never seen them in anything prior to them being
Yeah.
the Doctors either. That's where I learned of those actors.
Right.
Peter Capaldi is the only one
Is one of the,
that
the
I
few
had
exceptions.
seen. I hadn't even seen.
So see,
anything
he'll
I hadn't
be a
even
different
seen-
one for you.
I
then.
hadn't even seen anything that Christopher Eccleston was in before I saw him as the Doctor. It wasn't until after that I saw 28 Days Later and all the other things, and then suddenly, oh hey, this is him. So for me, it's going to be Capaldi because, well, even you guys have seen Capaldi in something else. It's in Doctor Who, but you saw him in Doctor Who. But I was watching in the thick of it, and I was watching Skins, and I was watching a lot of this other British television that he was already established in prior to.
I guess, did I see World War Z before?
It came out before he became the Doctor.
Before you,
It came out the summer before he took over.
not before you saw his eyebrows.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, you would have seen his eyebrows prior.
So I'm still stuck seeing him as the Doctor
Yeah.
before I saw anything.
Even though it was just the eyebrows.
That's why I have come to. This is the first time I've come to a role, with the exception. Where I think John Hurt is the exception of the rule. But this is the first time that I've seen any actor before they were the Doctor, and that's why it's been interesting to watch Capaldi's tenure as the Doctor, because I'm so familiar, especially with him as Malcolm.
Tucker.
I almost said Reynolds. Malcolm Tucker in the thick of it, because it's such a drastically different part for him, and it's just, in fact, when he shows up at the end of Time of the Doctor, because we got eyebrows, but Time of the Doctor, it's like I was nervous because I had no idea, because we'll talk more about this when we do his Beyond the Doctor, but I was nervous because I didn't know what the heck was going to come out of his mouth. I'd seen him in interviews and stuff, and he's pretty low key in Skins, but just it was like, what's he going to say? He's got a potty mouth. Anyway.
I'd like to see if we can get a copy of the Three Musketeers, where he plays.
Oh, I'd love to watch that. I've heard that's a really good show.
The Pope, not the Pope.
That's the word I was looking. It's like
Bishop,
Richelieu,
Richelieu.
Cardinal.
Cardinal
Richelieu.
Let's go down the line here.
That's exactly. I went Pope, Bishop. No,
Actually, I think Bishop is under Cardinal, but
so I'd like to get a copy of that too. But we talked a little bit about this on Twitter, watching for the Friday Night Who, that we set it up. He's the War Doctor. He's the one we don't talk about. He's going to be grumpy. Okay. and then he wasn't. He's delightful in Day of the Doctor. He's awesome. He's a doctor. He's funny and witty, and I found the same thing when I read Engines of War, that they had really captured those moments. That yes, he's in some undesirable circumstances, and that things are going wrong, but it's still John Hurt. It's still he's allowing these nuances to come through in his performance.
Well, and I've always got the impression that he may have tried to disavow the name of the Doctor because of what he was doing, but I never got the impression that what he was doing was ever that bad until it was when he thinks he pushes the moment.
Right, until he does
And then that's when he tries to forget that incarnation, because that shadows everything that he did during the war, even though what he did during the war might not have been as really bad as he thought it was.
Well,
Engines of War. It wasn't really that
that's
severely
just it.
bad.
I'll take it one step further, because I think Engines of War is built around the familiarity of the Doctor that we get from Day of the Doctor. But with the exception of Engines of War, we don't know anything about that time between the 8th Doctor and the 10th Doctor, or until he shows up. So there could have been more dark, violent, grumpy moments in that tenure. And until that story is filled in later,
until
which
we get
then
to Big
again,
Finish.
I think will continue to be I
knows?
think it'll continue to be painted by what we experienced in Day of the Doctor, and not what
actually happened.
What could have actually happened. So I think that's the difficult thing, because he's at the end. He's the war weary Doctor by the time we get him. He's not the war Doctor. He's the war weary Doctor, because he's ready just to end it all. He's ready. He's done. He's like, okay, this is enough. I'm done. We're just going to finish this. And so at that point, he's going to have maybe a little bit of different perspective and character than he did maybe years prior to that.
I could almost see that, except for one thing, which he's there and we meet him and everybody's terrified of him. Everybody's, we don't talk about that one. And even 8 in Night of the Doctor kind of makes up his mind. Make me a warrior. He's decided to put aside, because he has that whole discussion with what's her name about putting aside the name of the Doctor and becoming what the galaxy needs, or what they think the galaxy needs at this point, before he drinks the elixir. But then when the War Doctor shows up in the episode, he's weary and he's stolen the moment, and I'm done. I'm gonna no more. I'm gonna put an end to this. And then he has some conversations with the moment, and then he gets sucked through the portal. And his first line is, "Anyone lose a fez?"
Yeah.
And it's like, who's this guy? So if he was grumpy and war weary at that point, I don't know that he'd be able to turn it off and immediately fall back into or put on a persona of being this happy-go-lucky, because all of his interactions with all the other people, the joy on his face when he's sonicking the thing with them and going to wipe everybody's memory. But there are genuine moments of joy there.
I also get the impression, though, that some of that comes from the fact that 10 and 11 rub off on him. He remembers what he was like and what he will be like again.
That could be.
And so I think
I got it. And he's getting to be the Doctor again.
Yeah. But based on your argument, which I can concur and see, then I go back to what Keith said and agree with him, in the sense that it's more of what that moment did that painted his past. It's more of the action that he took is why we don't talk about it. Because he did come to that point that he did. And
he didn't remember meeting any of them at all throughout the entire thing, because it snapped back.
And when you because
he wouldn't, because it's current time.
Right.
For him.
Anybody. Right. Anytime you cross the timeline, it's only we perceive anytime you cross the timelines, it's only the latest or the last incarnation that remembers everything. Right. Everybody goes back to, and like he said, kind of snaps back to where they were. The other thing that the reality of it is, we continue to say, well, he didn't use the moment. Well, he still used the moment, and that's all they ever say until he used the moment. It's not until he pushed the button. It's not until he still used the moment in this case. True. So you would remember him using the moment. You just wouldn't remember what the result was.
Yeah. And so he assumes he destroyed everything.
And from a certain point of view, he would still believe that.
Yeah.
But this, I'm sidetracking. I'm sorry, we're not really reviewing.
Well, at
Day
least
of the
now
Doctor,
we're
but
talking about this and not Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. We're actually talking about John Hurt.
I just that to me is one of the things that makes Hurt's performance in Day of the Doctor so outstanding. Is the fact that I was prepared to, like the Doctor, fear this guy a little bit and be very uncertain of this guy and what are you doing with this guy, and even in all the little cartoons and things that people have kind of posted that have everybody in a line and then there's a gap and the War Doctor's standing there and 8 and 9 on either side of them are kind of looking over their shoulders like, we don't know about you, and it almost makes me angry. It's almost just a little, that's not fair, because he's the Doctor. He's just...
Well, and as Tin says, he was the Doctor when it was impossible to be the Doctor.
Yeah, he's just he's the Doctor that made a bad decision. He had one off day, is what it boils down to.
Well, and he was faced with an impossible choice and chose the only solution he can find.
Exactly. And so I really, really hope that when we get to the big finish stuff, that we get more John Hurt as that Doctor.
Yeah, and I think we will. But again, I think that
even though this is going to be set during these terrible events.
That's just it, though. Anything that we get will be painted. The brush will be used to compared to what we got in Day of the Doctor, as we did with Engine of War.
Sure.
Because that's what everybody has to compare the performance and the character to. And so everything we get beyond that won't be what we perceived from Day of the Doctor. No, Name of the Doctor. It'll be everything we got from Day of the Doctor.
Right.
So
I just hope that that's where they actually go with it instead of going, well, he wasn't dark enough.
I think they will. I think they will. I think they'll go the way you're thinking.
But
we'll find out. We're going to put that on the schedule soon because I realized that we don't have to know anything from the other Big Finish stuff.
This is
so
just a standalone.
Let's just get it on and get it done.
And I think what's interesting is that
I sound like we're trying to get done with it. Let's get it on and get it done. I just want to get to it.
Because there's already 2 volumes out now.
I'm already probably just going to start on it anyway. I'm so excited for more, especially after watching 1984, a movie that has nothing to do with Doctor Who,
and rewatching
everything.
Day of the Doctor.
Yeah, it has everything to do with John Hurt, and now I'm excited to listen to more.
And isn't it interesting that the John Hurt that we got, and just that you and I rewatched,
I've seen it again recently.
The lighthearted, the fun, the John, not the John Hurt that shows up in 1984. No.
Right,
now, again, circumstances, different, but there's not a glimmer of enjoyment, even in the sexual moments, even in the romance, even in this. It's more of a content, finding somebody to latch on to kind of attachment than as opposed to a genuine love that makes you joyously stupid and happy and that kind of stuff.
Although you almost get shades of that towards the end of that romance.
Yeah, you almost see it going there.
Especially since I think she's the one that sort of drives him. It's the romance and the poetic aspect of it that kind of drives him to seek out the resistance. Because I think that he's always had these thought crimes or these doubts, but it wasn't until the romance really kind of blossoms, and I think he really ultimately falls in love with her.
He feels the freedom.
He feels well, and I think
the
it
scene
also
in front of the window.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just
that's the first instance that I think you really get that.
Yes.
And then they come crashing through the wall, and
you hear the voice, and then the picture falls off the wall.
I kept thinking...
The movie takes this dive.
I kept thinking when they were standing there at the window and he's commenting on the old woman and her singing, it's like, she can see you. You know this, right? She can look up and see you and she's going to make the report. I mean, come on.
That's kind of
You're hiding out. Don't stand in front of the open window.
If I remember right, the book even implies that she was even in on it. That she wasn't as,
Oh, really?
That she was part of the... It implies that she was part of the ploy. She was part of the spying on the...
really?
Yeah. Huh. Which is because he notices her more often and hears her singing all this in the book, and there's a real almost unconnected warmth you get for this character, this woman down into how carefree she is, and the joyous song that she sings when everything is the way it is in society, and you almost start to really kind of admire this woman and then for later to imply that she was probably in on all this. It's like
Well,
gut punch again. Double gut punch.
The neighbor's kid who was randomly hanging out in the hallway watching him come up the stairs.
That kid's in the book more, too.
Is he?
Yeah, and that kid's accusing Winston of thought crimes much more than just the one instance.
Now, I'm not crazy. The other guy that wound up in the cell with him for a brief time,
this is the guy who was trying to borrow
Sanders
from you.
Yeah. That's his kid, right? Because I thought he called her Mrs. So-and-so.
I get the impression that it is, and because he says that my boy is...
And then, he says his daughter. His daughter's the one that outed him.
Because both the boy and the girl are brother and sister. She doesn't say anything. It's the boy that's calling out Winston. But then, he says it was the daughter that ended up... Yeah, so...
Which makes
You're not crazy, but I don't think it's definitive.
Well... I'm not wrong about that one.
Yeah.
I may be crazy, but I'm not wrong. And then, because what was the other thing that do you really think Sanders or whatever his name was? Do you think he was? Because he was like, apparently I'm a thought of a.
I think that's the idea is
just the fact that somebody reported on him and he was like, okay, I'll confess.
Yeah, I think that ultimately, I think that the story implies that he is somehow connected to Winston's demise.
Okay.
But I don't think it's clear. So I think that's the thing is that the film and the book both make you really struggle to think.
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about both of them.
Well, that's what true science fiction should do.
It challenges you to think about it without spoon-feeding you the answers. And I liked that. I liked the fact that I had to come to my own conclusions many times that this is what has happened. And even after, it's a great testament to this film that we're sitting here talking about this kind of stuff as well, because we're still trying to connect the dots even after we've seen the film. I haven't watched it since Tuesday this week, and so we're still trying to connect the dots. And I guess it's the mark of a great film.
I finished it about 2 hours ago, and it's just kind of like, and I'm angry. I'm angry that it's taken me this long to see it. I'm angry that it's still relevant. I'm angry that it's such a... Because there are so many different ways you could take it. Because you could, based on the film, without taking the book into account, you could really look at it that this neighbor guy is completely innocent of everything. But that his kid thought he was acting weird and made a report, and they came and nabbed him.
Right,
and that's why he's such a crumbling mess, because he's like, apparently I'm in on it, didn't know it, I really hope I can confess and get out of here, because,
Yeah,
maybe that's all it takes is somebody to go, that guy's acting weird.
That's the impression you get.
And when I say I'm angry, I mean that I'm,
Yeah, no, just energized about it.
And, yeah. I am angry, but I'm angry in a good way.
Yeah.
Well,
it's a very thought-provoking film.
Except for the fact that it's still relevant.
Now I'm angry about that.
Now I'm angry about that. But.
Sean, what we got coming up on the schedule?
Well, coming up next week on the schedule, I just love that we say schedule. Terror of the Vervoids. I'm not happy that we say Terror of the Vervoids. No, I'm kidding. I liked Terror of the Vervoids. I thought it was time to put it back on because, we haven't done that one in a while. And we need some more 60 in our life. Mainly because we're going to be, since we've already reviewed it, we're going to be doing some Big Finish, which is Catch 1782, mainline number 68. And then some more Titan comics. With the 12th Doctor, we're going to finish out Series 1, so issues 11 through 15. Of his, and those two will go together like peas and carrots because they're both grumpy doctors. I don't know. made sense when I scheduled it.
Okay.
We were actually just discussing the further adventures of the Traveling the Vortex schedule before we recorded this, and I will get those posted for you this week so that everybody will know in advance, and hopefully it'll be a nice long run of things that are coming up that you can all enjoy with us, and maybe we'll put some more Doctor audios on there to appease Glenn. I think he just wants more Dalek stories. I really think that's where we're at.
And because we just did
Day
of the Doctor, we got to put a Dalek story on. We can't do Day of the Doctor again for a War Doctor's audios.
We joked last night that we think we're just going to do Night of the Doctor one night for a Friday Night Who and call it. All right, everybody ready? Sync, play. 6 minutes later, we're done.
Sounds good to me. All right. Well,
I would go further, but that's
all we have.
That's the end.
Be sure to continue to support us on Patreon if you can. If you're already a subscriber, thank you very much. Or already a member or a supporter, thank you very much. And if you can throw a little bit of money your way, if you could throw a little bit of your money our way and help support this podcast, we certainly would appreciate it. There is a link on our webpage, www.travelingthevortex.com. There are also some other links on the right-hand side of the page. Those are click-through links to our various sponsors, which include Amazon and Entertainment Earth. And shout out again to Ben, who has been using our click-through link for Amazon for a lot of stuff. In fact, I just saw he got a great deal on a book. He ordered one, got 3.
We can't always promise that.
No, we can't always promise that, but that's wonderful. And then, of course, the various social media, which Keith already touched on, so we're not going to do that again.
Don't forget about the Goodreads Book Club is the only one I did not touch on.
That's right. This month's book is Deep Time,
which I'm enjoying.
Yeah.
I'm about halfway through.
Keith's going to start soon.
Yes.
Speaking of scheduling, that'll be on there soon, too.
I will be on there.
All right. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on this week that we need to before we get done?
I suppose just as a potential heads up, if you do not own the special edition version of the Aztecs, you may want to think about picking that one up. It's, of course, still readily available, thank goodness. And you can go to our page and then click through the Amazon link to order your copy. I'm not going to spoil the reason being, but I will say that there's a special feature on there that would make something that's coming up down the road would make your life a little bit easier if you had that. So I better get mine ordered because I don't own that one yet. It says I don't think I own that one.
I actually have that one.
Special edition?
I have the special edition because I waited. All right. Well, if that's going to do it for this week's show, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
I can see all of you because I am watching.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.